So a Chinese fighter pilot went on Chinese state television to claim that he locked onto two American stealth fighters at the same time in a dramatic air-to-air interaction that sounds like it was ripped right out of the script for Top Gun 3. And I've had a lot of folks ask me now if I think these claims are true, and more to the point, if I think China's J-16 really could lock on to American F-22s or F-35s. So let's start with what the pilot Li Chao from the PLA Western Theater Command had to say. And I'll quote his translation right from the point in which he says he spotted two foreign jets approaching him from the cockpit of his J-16. Quote, "They headed straight toward our two aircraft. Their intention was very clear. It was a provocation. With our backs to the territorial sea line, we had to intercept them." From there, he claims that he locked onto one of the American fighters while the other broke away at high speed and locked onto him. At that point, Lee claims that he did a barrel roll, flying inverted directly over the American fighter like Maverick scoping out a MiG-28. And I will quote him again. "At that moment, my canopy was just 10 to 15 meters away from his. After completing this maneuver, I simultaneously locked onto both foreign fighter jets. In the end, both aircraft withdrew." Now, there is no evidence of this interaction provided by the Chinese military or Chinese state television, but let's give Lee the benefit of the doubt and say that he really did share some airspace with American F-22s or F-35s at some point in the past year. I mean, intercepts between Chinese and American aircraft are not at all uncommon, especially over the vast expanses of the South China Sea that China has illegally laid claim to. So that part's believable. So let's focus on Lee's claims, starting with how the interaction began, when he visually spotted two American fifth-generation fighters heading toward his fourth-generation J-16. In other words, he did not detect these aircraft until they intentionally closed with him head-on until they were within visual range. And I hate to break this to Lee, but that doesn't sound like he intercepted them. That sounds a lot more like they intercepted him, and he just didn't even know about it until they walked up and booped him on the nose. Now, after that, he claims that he locked onto one of these American fighters while the other took up position to lock onto him. Now, these aircraft aren't in a real fight, and these countries are not at war. So what Lee said is that he escalated this interaction by locking onto one of those aircraft, and the American aviators responded in kind. But then he claims that he came up on one of those American fighters and, again, executed a barrel roll over it and somehow magically ended up behind both of those stealth fighters in the process so he could quickly lock onto each and demonstrate his aviation superiority. And here's the thing. Stealth fighters are designed for BVR, or beyond visual range engagements, meaning these American jets could have taken out that J-16 long before Lee ever spotted them with his Mark I eyeballs. Once you're within visual range, stealth isn't really a factor anymore, because stealth does not mean invisible, and you can still lock onto stealth aircraft as long as you're close enough. And that's before we even consider the possibility that these jets may have been flying with Lunenburg lenses or radar reflectors on, as they often do, to mask their stealth profile, or how the J-16's infrared search and track targeting could certainly lock onto heat signatures produced by stealth jets when you are, again, at that kind of close range. All that is to say that locking onto stealth fighters after they already took you by surprise and then did you the favor of coming closer until you finally realized they were there is not exactly the flex that Chinese state media seems to think it is. And while that doesn't mean it's impossible that Lee really could have gotten that lock, his story sounds to me like it either demonstrates a pretty serious lack of understanding of how air combat plays out, or it's just a bunch of nonsense. But either way, it was good for a laugh.